have everybody muted. We also are recording this, and we have deactivated the share screen. We anticipate that this meeting will last about 90 minutes. We have a full agenda, and let's go over it. First, we'll hear from our guest speaker, Christine Knapp, who is the director of the Philadelphia Office of Sustainability. Christine will tell us about the important work that they're doing in key vision areas and update us on the work they're doing. You'll have an opportunity to ask her questions by putting those questions in the chat, and one of our chat monitors, probably me, will ask them. Next, members of the Action Committee will provide short presentations on 4 key areas: energy, waste, health, and education. Then we want to hear your thoughts on environmental issues, so we'll go into breakout groups and try and capture everyone's ideas and then bring them back to the entire group. Finally, and appropriately, we will end our Environmental Action Forum with a poem by Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. It's called Earthrise. Our objective is to use this information to begin to plan the work of this committee for the entire year. Before we introduce our guest speaker, co-founder Stan Shapiro would like a minute of our time. Stan?
Unmute.
Unmute yourself, Stan.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. As Gloria outlined, everyone, we're about to hear a presentation from one of the most important environmental leaders in Philly government, Christine Knapp. Then you're going to hear about Philly Neighborhood Network's multifaceted approach to dealing with environmental issues. And finally, you'll have a chance to influence that approach in a small group setting. But before we get to that exciting program, I have to point out that implementing our plans moving forward is going to cost money. If you like where we're going on environmental issues, we need you to put in some time, but we also need your financial help. To provide it, all you have to do is click the link that's about to magically appear in the chat box. There you'll see your contribution choices. Any support you give when you click will be appreciated. But know that if you choose the option for monthly giving, you'll be helping to sustain our work over the long haul. So please give what you can, and we can keep moving ahead. And now I think it's Christine time. Would that be
Actually,
right?
no.
Okay.
Now I'll turn it over to steering committee member and chair of this committee, Maurice Sansom, who will give you an overview of the work of this committee and introduce our guest speaker. Maurice.
Maurice, you're on mute.
Right. Must be, never mind. Thank you, Gloria and Stan. I'm a longstanding member of this steering committee for Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks and the chair of this committee. In my day job, I serve as the Eastern Pennsylvania Director for Clean Water Action. I'm absolutely serious in saying today's event is only possible because of the remarkable group of women who have given Tim and I total confidence in today's program. Judy Morgan, Hillary Baum, Peg Shaw, and Hillary Zenkel, each serving as coordinators for the Environmental Action Committee's working groups, which we will talk about a little later in the program. Now, as programs go, today's event will be exciting and a little unusual. We have organized an interactive experience that will call on each of you to identify your interests that we will in turn use to select action projects that will become Philadelphia Neighborhood Network's environmental agenda for 2021. Our objective is to organize projects that you will want to be involved in and to be active, both as members and as leaders. Philadelphia Neighborhood Network is about changing Philadelphia and changing the world for the better on a wide range of social issues. Today, the focus is on environment and sustainability, and I encourage you, seize this opportunity, join us, and make it happen. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Christine Knapp. Christine is both a dear friend and colleague who I met shortly after she graduated from Villanova some 20 years ago with a bachelor's degree in political science and communications. and took her first job as a program organizer with Clean Water Action. It's been with a mixture of pride and awe that I have followed her career. Christine was appointed as the director of the Office of Sustainability for the City of Philadelphia under Mayor Jim Kinney's administration in January of 2016. Previously, she served as the Deputy Chief of Staff and Director of Governmental Affairs for the Philadelphia Water Department, where she served as the main liaison to City Council and engaged in numerous external stakeholder conversations, particularly on green storm water infrastructure implementation. For more than 15 years, Christine has been at the heart of Philadelphia sustainability efforts, including as the Director of Outreach for Penn Future, where she co-founded the Next Great City initiative to enact a common sense, cost-effective sustainability policy agenda for Philadelphia. While at Clean Water Action, she worked at local air pollution issues stemming from the South Philadelphia Sunoco refinery, was a key player in the Recycle Now campaign, an effort we worked on together that brought curbside recycling to every resident in Philadelphia. Christine has won the Envision Charlotte Women in Sustainability Award, the Florence Nielsen Environmental Leadership Award, and the special recognition from Phila Posh for her work building alliances between the environment and labor movements. Christine serves on the board of the Passyunk Square Civic Association, representing the neighborhood where she lives with her husband and 3-year-old daughter. A leader in her community with 20 years, an accomplished advocate for sustainability, and in Philadelphia as a director of Office of Sustainability, she's without argument, Philadelphia's leading public official on behalf of the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Christine Knapp.
Maurice, I'm blushing over here a little bit, so thank you for that very, very nice introduction. Nice to be introduced by a friend and someone who has been with me on a lot of steps along this journey that I've been on. So great to be with you all. So I have, I think, about 10 minutes, and I kind of wanted to frame up for you sort of where Philadelphia is, particularly on climate action, and share some ideas for how folks can help us get to achieving the goals that we've set forward. So just a very quick intro for those of you who are less familiar with our office. The Office of Sustainability has been around for about 12 years. It was created under Mayor Nutter in 2008, put out GreenWorks, the first sustainability plan in 2009. When Mayor Kenny came into office and I joined the office, we put out a updated GreenWorks plan in 2016 and have been working on moving forward on sort of key elements of the sustainability plan for the city. I would say in the last few years, really kind of pivoting our work to primarily be focusing on climate action. And so our office works in the leadership role in a number of initiatives, but we also work sort of, I often use a car analogy, which I really should move off of unless I make it an EV, but in some issues we're in the driver's seat, in some issues we're in the passenger seat, and some we may just be in the back seat, giving the occasional encouragement to the folks in the front across city government. So Parks and Recreation, the Water Department, the Health Department, many other city agencies are oftentimes really in the leadership role, and we're just kind of supporting and helping where we can. But we try to serve as the central coordination office so that we can keep a tab on everything that's going on and help to drive our larger agenda forward in a strong way. Some of you may have heard recently Mayor Kenny announced that we were updating Philadelphia's goal for climate action to be carbon neutral by 2050. That's advancing on top of our goal that was once reducing 80% by 2050. That goal is in line with what the science is telling us is really necessary in order to stave off the worst effects of climate change. And luckily, it's also in line with the goal of the federal Biden administration, which we are hoping will open up a whole new world of opportunities for us to scale up action now that we have a federal administration who wants to be rowing in the same direction rather than taking us backwards as the last administration did. We also, at the same time, released a climate action playbook. I believe it was circulated, so I'm hoping that folks have had a chance to look at it. But that's primarily what I'm going to just walk through, because I think it's a good structure with which to show what needs to get done to hit carbon neutrality. It also shows what we are doing and what we're committed to, but it also shows where we're falling short and where we'll need to be more ambitious and do even more in order to actually achieve those goals. And then I think that opens the door to where others can sort of help pitch in and move us towards meeting those goals as well. So the first thing that's important to know is, what does climate change mean for Philadelphia? We always shorthand it by saying Philadelphia is getting hotter and wetter. We are experiencing increased temperatures, and more of those are coming in heat waves, so more days sort of clumped together that are extremely high heat. We're already experiencing that now, and we'll experience that more and more depending on what our emission scenarios are over the coming decades. We know that like other climate risks, this is not experienced equally by all Philadelphians. We have average surface temperature mapping that shows that there's as much of a 22-degree difference between hot neighborhoods and cool neighborhoods in Philadelphia. And the hot neighborhoods are all low-income communities and communities of color. And that is pretty much true across the board for climate risks. They're more borne by folks who are most vulnerable, either because of income or other sort of marginalization, and almost all people of color as well. So that's a major risk for us as well, is that as we're looking at existing risks that the city faces, high poverty rates, obesity and other health outcomes, crime and safety issues, climate change can really be a multiplier of those risks if we don't take action. The other major risk is the wetter part, which is increased frequency and severity of storms and flooding that is associated with both those storms and with sea level rise, and the combination of sea level rise with storms on top of it. And we have maps, again, that show different projection scenarios based on different emission scenarios. But, you know, the areas of Southwest Philadelphia around Eastwick, the airport, Navy Yard, and then river wards up sort of along the Delaware are high vulnerable areas of the city. And Eastwick, again, mostly majority community of color and lower income community there that tends to experience those impacts, including tropical storm ECIS that hit in August, and about between 600 and 700 homes and properties were underwater during a heat wave, during a pandemic. So the layering of, you know, sort of disruptive events and these risks are also something that we really need to grapple with. The other sort of piece of context for Philadelphia is, what is our carbon footprint? What does it actually look like in Philadelphia in terms of tackling this issue? For older cities like Philadelphia, buildings are our biggest source of emissions, and that's true here. About 75% of our emissions come from our buildings. Everything from high rises to single family homes contribute to that, and that's often surprising to folks. Nationally, transportation is the biggest source, but in cities we tend to have more public transportation, more walkability and bikeability, which helps us. But we also in Philadelphia have an older housing stock that tends to be more drafty and less energy efficient. But in Pennsylvania, we also have a fairly dirty electricity grid that's powering a lot of our buildings. Still quite a bit of the grid mix coming from coal and natural gas. So the combination of all those factors are why our building stock is our biggest source. Transportation is second at 22%, and waste is the smallest at 3%. People are often surprised by that waste number too. And I should say that there's a lot of different ways to cut up a carbon footprint. And you could look at consumption, and that would show up in buildings that are consuming things and transportation that is moving goods around. So when we look at emissions associated with consumption, it is much higher than 3%. So that's not really caught up in waste. What waste is really capturing is landfill and incinerator emissions. So I just want to point out, while it's small, I still think that waste and consumption is a big part of our footprint. It's just not divvied up quite the way that we do it, which is the standard for how cities capture their emissions. So moving into the sort of, what are we going to do about all of these sort of needs? You know, again, buildings being our biggest one. We've enacted a number of different programs for large buildings. We've had a program for about 8 years now that large buildings have to report their energy and water consumption to us. And we've actually seen a reduction among those buildings of 5% of energy use and 12% in carbon emissions since over the lifetime of that program. But we wanted to build on that. So we passed additional legislation requiring large buildings to perform a tune-up on their building every 5 years, or achieve a high performance building standard like a LEED for existing building or an Energy Star score of over 75. So those programs are also projected to create about 500 new jobs in Philadelphia. So we also want to make sure that those jobs go to folks who have historically been locked out of the building trades, and create sort of career pathways within sort of building and building efficiency work. We've updated the Philadelphia code, so new commercial buildings are going to be built to a much higher standard, 30% more efficient than the previous code. But we also really need to crack the nut on residential homes. It's a lot easier to tackle these large buildings. We only have about 3,000 really, really large buildings in the city, and so it's easy to crack down on those, and they have an outsized impact, so we feel justified in going after them. But single family homes, there's over 600,000 of, and we know, again, with the high poverty rate, that it's really difficult, particularly for low income homeowners or renters, to make those investments in their buildings. We also know that energy efficiency is not the only thing that homes need. Oftentimes there's other repairs, to plumbing or to other systems that need to be made. So a more holistic approach to home improvements, making sure that we're making homes healthier, more livable, and reducing sort of energy use at the same time is critical. And we're exploring a couple of different policy interventions and program coordinations that we think can help. The other part of the building piece, as I mentioned, is the electricity grid that feeds them, and moving towards 100% renewables, which is our citywide goal. As a city, we're committed to 100% electricity by 2030. So that's something we can do with the buildings that we own and operate. You may have seen that we did a large solar power purchase agreement that's going to provide us with about 22% of our electricity when that's complete. So we're chipping away at getting to the city's 100% goal, but we also need, citywide to help move people move in that direction as well. The Solarize program that's been run in coordination with our Philadelphia Energy Authority has been really helpful in helping residents and businesses adapt solar to their buildings. And we're looking for additional ways to support solar installations. We're hopeful that the passage of RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, at the state level will also help to put a cap in the electricity sector to help drive down emissions, but also create funding mechanisms that can then be driven into more programs. Particularly, I would hope to help low and moderate income households be able to move to solar. The other piece of sort of 100% renewable energy for us is thermal energy, which is the big sort of PGW question of what do we do with a municipally owned natural gas utility, and we have a carbon neutrality goal. And we've been undertaking a study, what we're calling a business diversification study with PGW, to essentially explore this question of what other services or energy sources can PGW provide to help them basically continue to exist and provide the key service that they provide, which we always say is comfort, right? They're providing comfort to homes. They're providing natural gas, but that doesn't matter. They can take the natural gas out and still provide comfort. How can they continue to keep doing that in a low carbon or no carbon future? So we're working on that study now and hope to have it out in the next couple of months.
Christine, could you wrap up?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't even get to the transportation and waste, but I will maybe just quickly flip over to mitigation and adaptation, which is to basically just say also that while we're fighting climate change and reducing the sources of it, we also, as I said, with heat, need to recognize that it's already happening, it's already affecting Philadelphia, and is going to continue to. So in addition to heat, we're working on a number of different projects to figure out how to protect our residents, protect our infrastructure and our assets against the change in climate, including a citywide adaptation plan so that every neighborhood understands their risks, and neighborhoods that are particularly vulnerable can really have specialized projects and programs to help folks be resilient against those sort of disruptive events that that again we are already becoming more frequent, and we fear will become more so in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we ask some questions now?
Yeah.
Okay, is the recycling program really functioning, or is most of the recycling that's being picked up put in landfills and there's no meaning to our separating?
It is mostly happening. I will say I watch my own recycling occasionally get thrown in with the trash. It was happening obviously a lot over the summer and in the fall when the streets department was experiencing a lot of understaffing due to the virus, where a lot of their own sanitation workers were out, and then we were all home generating more waste at home rather than at our office buildings, and they just really couldn't keep up with it. I don't know why it's still happening, because I'm still getting reports of it happening occasionally. It really shouldn't be. So I'll say if the majority of recycling gets recycled, it does right now. Unfortunately, it does still happen, and apparently it is up to the call of the sort of district leader, where let's say it rains and there's a bunch of cardboard that's out that's wet. They have the discretion to say just throw it into the trash. But I get frustrated when it happens without communication. If we say, okay, we are understaffed and we have too much to pick up, it's going to go in the trash for now. I would rather be more transparent about that, because I want people to have confidence in the program, and I think that really undermines it. So I'm hoping that we can be more transparent and get sort of more information given out when that's going to be a decision that's made.
Thank you. What specific programs are underway to ensure equity and justice in the green building goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the job creation piece is particularly the angle that we're looking at there, because as I said, the investments in these buildings are going to drive a need for more skilled trades. And we know, based on Philadelphia's history, that the building trades have been historically white, and not even from Philadelphia, primarily a lot of white men from South Jersey and Delaware County. The rebuild program, I think, is a model for how to start making some inroads into diversifying the trades and creating apprenticeship programs and inroads that I think we want to see, build off of and build more opportunities for folks who have, again, historically been locked out. And I think it's not just this one program and this one policy, but there's so much need for those skilled trades that I think once that toe is in, and once we give one opportunity, there's going to be so many more, that the 500 jobs I mentioned is maybe just the tip of the iceberg to get folks employed and in really, good career path jobs.
Have you had any resistance from the city on any of your plans?
Yes.
Could you be more specific?
Do I have to?
It's your call.
I mean, I think the role of sustainability offices, and I talk to my colleagues around the country, our role is change agents, right? The reason we have climate change is because we've been doing the collective world has been doing certain things in certain ways for a very long time. That's created a problem. To change that problem and reverse it requires changing. And nobody particularly is good at change, and particularly people, in bureaucracies are often particularly uninclined to change. And so, yeah, we do hit resistance. I think we are also, like, as our job is to be change agents, is finding the ways to make changes that can bring people along, to find their reason for wanting to do something differently, to pilot things, to find funding, to provide support, to kind of get over that resistance that we face. So sometimes it goes away easily, sometimes it's stubborn, but yeah, it's part of the work.
Okay, the neighborhoods in the city are very different, so we assume the actions that each neighborhood should take to respond to climate change are different. What actions might you recommend we pursue in Northwest Philly?
That's a really good question, and I don't know enough about Northwest Philly's specific problems or issues. I would say heat is not generally the Northwest problem. On the heat map, there's a lot more tree coverage, a lot more green space, a lot less industry and sort of paved surfaces and highways. So still need to keep planting trees and taking care of trees, but that's not a top priority. And I think outside of maybe like Germantown, there's not too much flooding. I mean, I guess if you're counting parts of Manayunk in the Northwest, Manayunk certainly has a big flooding problem. I would imagine, given the sort of higher amount of wealth in Northwest, there's probably also a higher consumption. And so that's maybe something to particularly look at. As I mentioned, sort of cracking into consumption is a key part of climate and really on waste as well. So that could be something particularly interesting to model out.
Thank you. What special programs did you suggest to people of color in their neighborhoods that are most impacted?
So the one that we have piloted out the most is this as a heat project in Hunting Park, which is kind of two neighborhoods in one. Almost the western part of the neighborhood is primarily Black, and the eastern part of the neighborhood is primarily Latinx, a variety of different cultures there. And so we've identified that community as both high heat and high heat vulnerability. And so we've been working with them for about 2+ years now to identify, what's the community's experience with heat, what would they want to see to better cope with heat, and how can we actually make it cooler in the neighborhood. And we put together a community-led heat resiliency plan with specific recommendations, and now have been supporting the community and trying to implement some of those specific recommendations. So I think that's a model for us of, not walking into a community and saying, this is what you need, but really asking some key questions and surveying folks to find out what is of interest in that community and how we can help, help fundraise, help connect to other resources, bring in other partners to implement the things that that community wants.
Okay, we have more questions than we're going to have time for. If we send these to you, will you forward answers to us so we can share them with the listeners?
Sure. Can I answer one question that was
Sure.
sent? I think
Yes.
maybe a Maurice question, but so what is the best way we can support your work? Budget season is coming up, and it's a tough time right now with budgets because of the pandemic having such a big impact. So it's even more important for members of council to hear about how important you think this work is, and to make sure that we are funded for it, because I can't do work if I don't have people to move work forward. So if you can do anything, that's the number one thing for me.
Can you tell us, do you need additional staff? What is it that you need us to advocate for?
Just, all the money. All the money. Money translates to staff, money translates to contractors or vendors or consultants. So just any dollars that we can access are helpful.
Okay. Tim, do we have any time left?
No, we have 20, we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Okay. 1 second. How does zoning along the city's riverfronts need to change to prevent new residential construction that will worsen the city's vulnerability to sea level rise?
Yeah, that's exactly the question that we have in terms of that citywide climate adaptation approach. Is developments are happening piecemeal. Property owners and managers are making decisions to protect their own assets piecemeal. And so looking at Southwest in the example I gave earlier, Eastwick, Airport, Navy Yard, the former refinery site that Hilco is now redeveloping. Each one of those actors, the ports, each one of those actors could make decisions to help protect their property, which could then push water onto the next one, right? So we can't be making these decisions piecemeal. We need to have standards across the board that any new development, that any new investments, are made with and with the right science in mind too. I think, guidance around using the 100-year flood versus the 500-year flood, are definitely changing. So I think we need to set as a city what our minimum sort of protections are and what folks should be building to. And one of the top reasons why we need to do it is because when we let people build along the riverfront, it again makes it worse for everybody else. But the city is also taking on the problem of what happens when that property floods, and the city has to rescue folks or has to sort of be responsible for the response to that storm or that flood. So it's like a triple-edged problem so we absolutely need to get ahead of it. And I'll just mention we hired a chief resilience officer a couple of months ago, the man named Salim Chapman, who's been our deputy director for the last 2 years has stepped up into that role. And so that's the work he's been charged with coordinating.
Thank you. So if you could either, if you have time now, stay and answer these in the chat, or else we'll send them to you and you can answer them at your leisure. And thank you so much for the work that you do and for sharing it with us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me. And I appreciate all the work that you all do too.
Okay, Maurice, take it away.
Maurice, you may be muted.
All right, we'll get this done eventually. Thank you, Christine. It's always a pleasure to work with you yet again. I want to, later I will put into the chat the climate action plan that was recently published out of the office, which lays out the details of some of the things that Christine talked about. Okay, it's time for us to move to our next section. Let me explain to you what we're going to do next. Our intent here is to get you to work with us to define what the actions that we will do in this next year, that will become our environmental agenda. In the next 15 minutes, we're going to randomly assign you to discussion groups with the facilitator, so you can share the subjects or activities that you feel are important for us to focus on. It's important that you understand we're not asking you to make a commitment at this time, just to share your interest and help us get organized. In order to prepare you, 4 members of our Environmental Action Committee will take a couple of minutes each to describe to you the options you might consider in 4 areas: energy, waste, public health, and environment. And for those who aren't politically motivated in these options, education outreach. Now, let's do that now. And when they are complete, I will tell you what will happen next. Starting with energy, let me turn this over to Hillary Baum.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm going to be the coordinator for the Energy Working Group, and I want to thank Tim especially for helping to pull this event together. So our general thought as the working group is that, like the Environmental Action Committee as a whole, each EAC working group is an opportunity to engage each other at all levels of experience to take action on a variety of venues. So while we are proposing a structure for working groups for now, I just want to stress that we're open to the energy of who literally shows up to help shape the organization of the committee and each working group going forward. For starters, as the Energy Working Group, we want to unpack how to break down this vast subject into small enough bites so we can focus our proposed actions within a broader framework and not feel overwhelmed. So here's one way to organize the kinds of actions we can undertake in the Energy Working Group. I think this is a pretty conventional way to approach this, and there certainly are other ways that I hope you would consider bringing to the table. So we could start with the first, number one, we can work to keep fossil fuels in the ground. And we can do that with a focus on fossil fuel infrastructure, on fracking and fracking waste within the Delaware River watershed, or on focusing on divestment from fossil fuels. A second category of actions could be around supporting renewables. And in this case, we would focus on infrastructure for renewables at various scales. We'd look at community solar and residential solar, deal with electric vehicles, and perhaps even help support new alternative energy portfolio standards for Pennsylvania. The third category we could look at is how we could support energy efficiency, which I'm sure you all know is tremendously important and in an accessible way to have an impact on climate change. So one of the ways that we're proposing that we get involved would be to look at the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative proceeds. In many states, a lot of these proceeds have gone towards energy efficiency. And then we could look at specific energy efficiency initiatives, things that Christine may have mentioned, or did mention, I should say. So within this framework, there are existing campaigns within each of these areas that we can lend our support to, with the working group creating criteria for how we would make those choices. Or if the group may decide to initiate a new campaign that evolves from connections within our neighborhoods and within this organization. In all cases, we would put our actions as a working group in the context of environmental justice and building relationships of support for taking action both within and beyond our Environmental Action Committee. While some of our work together on energy will focus on city and state level issues and legislation, it's also the connection to our neighborhoods that will help steer what we do. So thank you, and I'll turn it over now to Hillary Zankel, who's going to talk about waste.
Hi, thanks, Hillary. Hello, everybody. The Waste Working Group is focused on zero waste actions that will end landfilling and incineration and reduce the amount of waste we generate, with the recovery of the rest by recycling and composting. We are currently focusing on two possible actions: the Bring Your Own Bag bill and a campaign to stop treating our recyclables as trash, as Christine mentioned earlier. We invite you also to propose additional focuses and actions. Our committee is working with Clean Water Action, the Sierra Club, and City Council member Mark Squilla to amend a bill passed in December of 2019 banning plastic bags. The amendment would add a small fee to all single-use bags, both paper and plastic. The plastic bag ban, as it stands, would move everyone to paper bags, which is neither an environmentally nor an economically friendly solution. Retailers would have to increase the cost of groceries by $80 to $100 million a year to pay for these free paper bags, which would disproportionately impact the poor. Adding a fee will encourage shoppers to bring their own reusable bags, and based on the experience in other cities, this amendment will reduce the use of all single-use bags by an average of 50% within a few months of enactment. Another issue is that for 2 years in a row, Republicans in the state legislature have forced language in the annual budget bill that preempts any municipality from either adopting bag bans or adding fees. Until the preemption is lifted, Philadelphia cannot enact any bill. Working with our partners, the Philadelphia Neighborhood Network's Environmental Action Committee is focusing on overturning the preemption. Please consider joining us on the Bring Your Own Bag project. It would have a vital impact on waste and plastic reduction in Philly. A second issue is one that we've just heard about. It's the problem of Philadelphia trashing a lot of our recycling. This is happening partly because of worker shortages during COVID. And we think, as Christine mentioned, that more transparency is needed. So we would like to work with the city to understand more how we can stop our recyclables from being trashed. And so the city would communicate better with people, and they'd best be able to figure out how not to put out their recyclables when it's going to be picked up as trash. So please join us for the campaign to stop trashing our recyclables if that's something that interests you. Thank you, and I will turn it over now to Peg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peg Shaw. Thanks, Hillary. I'm really excited to hear of all the potential projects we could get ourselves involved with. I'm here to give us a quick overview of urgent action issues regarding public health and the environment. These two intersectional issues most often and most severely impact communities of color in under-resourced neighborhoods. Here in Philadelphia, there are many campaigns already underway, which we can lend our support to, and others which may need to be started. Many folks here may already be aware of or even involved with some of these existing campaigns, or you may have a particular passion for starting something new. Here's just a short list of some of them for our consideration in the breakout session. 1, the septic gas-fired power plant located at the edge of Germantown and Nicetown. Opposition to this project is being led by neighbors against the gas plant. 2, the Healthy Outdoor Public Spaces Bill became law at the end of January. This law prohibits the use of toxic herbicides on our public lands, implements organic land management, reporting requirements, and a regulatory review process. Toxic Free Philly is leading this work and will be looking for folks to get involved. Conditions in our public schools Our public school buildings are toxic to children, teachers, and staff, from asbestos, lead paint, lead in the water, and the lack of non-toxic pest control. The Our Cities, Our Schools Coalition is leading the charge to make our schools safe. The PES refinery site in South Philadelphia is of national significance and has grassroots leadership from Philly Thrive. Another urgent issue is the proposed rail transportation of liquid natural gas, or LNG, otherwise known as bomb trains, through Philadelphia. This is an urgent issue that many groups have already started to get involved in, and we could get involved in collectively ourselves as well. Air pollution caused by diesel engines, particularly from rail, highways, and interchanges, are another major issue that impacts poor and under-resourced communities. Particularly the Germantown and Nicetown communities are hard hit by this kind of pollution. And as was mentioned earlier by Christine, the urban heat island effect, this refers to increased ambient air temperatures due to the heat absorbing materials of roads, buildings, and parking lots. There are lots of opportunities for us to connect with tree planting initiatives and green building trades initiatives on this issue. And finally, access to healthy fruits and vegetables directly impacts public health and the environment. There are a lot of groups to connect with already to do this work, such as soil generation, and the city is developing an urban agriculture plan. That's just a quick overview of some issues regarding public health and the environment. I'm looking forward to hearing about your interests in the breakout session. Next, we'll hear from Judy Morgan, who'll discuss community education and outreach.
Hi, everyone. In addition to doing the very important policy work, there's also the important work of reaching out to people in our communities and educating and engaging them so they can support enthusiastically the changes that will be needed. It's difficult to make sweeping changes in policy at the levels that are needed, especially with regard to climate justice, without broad public support. A lesson that was learned in France last year when working class people opposed climate reforms. There's several possible areas for action that can be addressed by the Community Education Working Group, and I'm sure other ideas will be coming up. First of all, organizing book groups. Tim Beckham and I are starting a book group on February 20th on the book, The Future We Choose, Surviving the Climate Crisis by Christiana Figueres. I'll put the information in the chat in a moment. And if there's a book that you'd like to read and share with others, please let us know. Secondly, it would be great to have a learning component in each of the working groups. For example, each group could take some time in every meeting to discuss an article or learn a skill or take turns presenting on a topic. And the community education group could play a role in compiling some excellent resources. Third, community education. This would be standard public education, initially by phone and Zoom because of the pandemic, but later at public events such as petitioning, handing out flyers, talking door to door, writing letters to the editor. If you like to talk to people, this would be a fun area to work in. Fourth, community outreach. We can also meet with leaders at the very, very local level, such as business owners, ministers, community association leaders, to talk to them about issues and invite them to become involved in specific ways. It's called a grass tops approach that some organizations have used. And in my experience with it, it's a very meaningful way to connect with people and fun. So thank you. And next we'll be getting into the breakout groups as Maurice described.
Thank you, Hillary, Peg, and Judy. Now, if everyone will just sit tight for a moment, you're going to be assigned to small discussion groups, and each with a facilitator. And the information you share, as we had mentioned earlier, we're going to use to help us organize environmental action projects. This is going to take a few minutes, so just bear with us. You will start the discussion. You'll be asked to answer 3 questions: your name, your preferred pronouns, and the environmental topics that interest you and why, so you can give that some thought. The facilitator will answer the questions and take it from there. We're going to have a total of 20 minutes to do this, and when we return, I will tell you how we will turn your work into action after hearing some brief reports. With that, let me turn this over to our organizer, Tim Brown, who'll give you further instructions. Tim, it's all yours.
Yeah, hi, folks. First, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to have everybody here with it. This is some great work we're doing here. So it's going to be a 20-minute breakout. The facilitator will announce themselves once we go into the breakout rooms. Everybody, we like to do a step up, step back approach to things. So if you know yourself to be a real talker, you want to give the opportunity for other folks to talk. So maybe if you've already spoken, wait until a couple of other people have spoken before you speak again. If you haven't spoken, we want to hear what you have to say. Everybody has important things to say. There are no dumb questions and no dumb comments. Kindly respect each other in the breakouts. And when we're done the breakouts, when we come back from it, the facilitators who will announce themselves in the breakout rooms will give a 1-minute report back for your group. Now, if you'll give me a moment, we're going to put everybody into breakout rooms and we'll be back shortly.
Happy to be talking about these issues post-Trump and the focus on electoral politics, and looking forward to working on issues in particular. Someone suggested that we focus on eco-friendly, accessible housing, particularly for low-income people, and that we look to making housing energy efficient. And we look at home ownership and the impact of home ownership. We look to retrofit the housing stock in Philly, and that we try to work for ways to help people take the profit out of their living spaces and create more co-ops and alternative ways to live. Someone mentioned that the regional greenhouse gas initiative, where you buy and sell credits, is really destructive for indigenous communities, and that was a big concern. So those were most of what we talked about.
Thank you, Gloria. Let's go to the second room. That's where you were, Judy. Did you lead in that space? You have to put up you're muted.
Yeah. Got it. Thanks. Yeah, so we had a number of ideas that were thrown out, or priorities, remediation of the PES site, environmental monitoring, especially air quality monitoring, so we can see the actual effects of pollution in Philadelphia, the plastic bags issue, the preemption bill that affects the plastic bags and other issues at the state level, increasing greenery in areas of Philadelphia that are lacking in it, toxics in schools, community education, a couple of people mentioned, including me, the regional greenhouse gas initiative at the state level that's coming up that will be a continuing issue, and also reducing emissions in general and better funding of open space and trees in Philly.
Thank you, Judy. Let's go on to room 3. That is where Hillary's ankle was. Was that you that ran that one?
Yeah.
There you go.
We had 4 main topics we were discussing. One was the problem of waste going to incinerators. That was a big concern, that we're burning up all of this stuff rather than recycling it and or reducing our waste. Another was someone proposed the idea of turning the plastic bags that hopefully we won't have too many left to turn into anything, but we will have some, to turn them into she started out putting them into pavement, which gets rid of them and also strengthens the pavement, which is an idea I haven't read about. There was big concern about flooding, which Christine Knapp was speaking about, flooding downtown. And this gentleman would love to work on this, would love the neighborhood network support to work on flooding. So that might be an issue we could look at. And the last was, we had a representative from the Neighbors Against the Gas Plant. And they have moved from trying to fight the plant to trying to mitigate some of the issues that the plant will bring up. They said there's going to be it's already sort of a heat island, and they're going to release all of their heat that they generate into the area, which will create more of a heat island effect. So they are looking at things like tree planting and other issues. There's asthma in the area. So they would love some support working on that.
Terrific, thank you. Hillary Baum, your turn.
Hi, I have a pretty short report. everybody in my group seem to know each other. So I have a handful of activists who already serve on a bunch of committees. But the way the interests were kind of focused in the conversation, we talked a long time about waste. And in particular, we talked about the issue of incineration and the plant that is in Chester. There was mention of a bill coming from Council Member Gilmore Richardson that addresses the contract with the incinerator plant that we might really want to take a look at. Then we did spend time talking about the fracking issue in regards to not only energy, but also in terms of public health and environment. So I would say that within our group, we touched really on each of the issue-oriented working groups.
Thank you. And the next one I think would be Peg Shaw.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Yeah, we had, I would say everybody in our group was also heavily involved with a variety of different issues. And the one overarching thing that we were able to come to agreement on is that public education is primary, and no matter what our focus areas are on environmental justice or climate change or anything else. And everybody is interested in making that a central part of the work that we're involved in terms of, we kind of had like a laundry list of a variety of different things that people were either currently working on or wanted to do work on. Aside from climate change, it included water quality and water quality monitoring, air pollution and air quality monitoring, citywide composting. There was one of our members that was really, I would say, passionate about looking into how we could do composting on a citywide level. We expressed concern about plastics and recycling, fracking, the LNG bomb trains, the gas plant, the SEPTA gas plant, the PES refinery site, issues around flooding, and then I think finally interest around pesticides, urban agriculture, and the how to support our urban forest in a tree canopy. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about.
Well, this is just terrific. There's a lot of energy and a lot of excitement in the room. So the question now is, what's next? Well, over the next 2 weeks,
Forgot Stan.
I'm sorry?
Group 6, Stan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Group 6, Stan.
Hello. Okay.
There he is.
There you
Go
go.
for it, Stan.
Well, we actually discussed a lot of the other issues, so I'm not going to drag us on much longer. The one that we discussed that wasn't mentioned is divestment. We did talk about divestment. We learned that Penn has agreed to divest. Hasn't done so yet, but is presumably in the process. Drexel has not done that, so if we want to find a target for some pressure, Drexel might be a good one. And we did talk about the other side of divestment, which is reinvestment, and how the city could both divest and reinvest by creating a public bank, which is something that Neighborhood Networks is deeply involved in. So that came up and seemed to be something people were in favor of. And that's my report.
Oh, there we go. Well, now we can say, thank you, everybody. We have really moved the needle here. We've got a lot to work with. So the question is, what's next? Over the next 2 weeks, what we plan to do is to organize and sharing what we have learned today, holding 4 action planning meetings, each led by one of the coordinators that you have met today. And in those sessions, we hopefully will plan and be in a position to announce what things that we will do. So If you have more you would like to say, you have ideas and thoughts, you're going to want to find yourself to attend one or all of these meetings. And I will tell you that if you have an idea that doesn't neatly fit any one of these, email us. You can bring up any issue in any meeting and we'll find its place. Those meetings, the Energy Working Group will be held on Saturday, February 27th at 4. The Waste Working Group, Sunday, February 21st at 4. The Public and Environmental Health Working Group will be on Saturday, February 20th at 4. And the Education and Outreach Working Group, Saturday, February 27th at 7 p.m. These are all going to be emailed to you with the Zoom links. So you will get the information. This you can make a note in your calendar right now in terms of the time so that you set it aside. Now, let me be really clear about this, okay? We are not going to be doing everything that we discussed today. Among those here, there are people who came here just because they're interested in seeing what's going on. Others who said, you know, I might be interested to volunteer if they do the right things. And still others, they want to get up front and help lead and make it happen. And we need all of that energy. We're going to pursue any project that we can get a small group of people who want to help make it happen. And when they do that, we'll give the full support of the resources of our organization, which get more plentiful every day. I'll also say that if you're part of another group or organization working on an issue that's related to environment and you'd like the support of the network, get in touch with us because we do that here as well. Well, I mean, this is a fun. I think we're going to make things happen. And with that said, what I want to do is turn this over to Peg Shaw for a call to action.
Thanks, Maurice. Yeah, following up with the notion of fun, I've been asked to kind of close us out in a certain way. What I want to do now is to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about why I'm a member of Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks and encourage you to join me. Among other things, I'm a Democratic committee person in the 38th Ward and an activist for public health and environmental issues. For the past 15 years, Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks has built a reputation as an organization that gets things done, whether it's pushing through a bill in City Council, campaigning on behalf of progressive candidates, or organizing an action on an important local issue, like what we've been talking about today. I first met PNN at a membership meeting in December 2016 and have participated in the work and supported the organization ever since. In fact, it was through the PNN committee person campaign that I was trained on and subsequently ran for committee person in my ward. Thanks, Philadelphia Neighborhood Networks. I really appreciate the organization's sustained commitment to fighting for practical strategies to build grassroots empowerment and structural change to improve the lives of every Philadelphian. And the committee person campaign was a great example of PNN's work. I've always felt like a welcome part of the team, that my contributions are appreciated, and there's opportunities to build my skills as an activist. As today's forum demonstrates, PNN is committed to building our collective capacity to connect with and support ongoing campaigns and start new ones to take on pressing environmental concerns right here in our city and address environmental justice and climate change at large. The only way to achieve these goals is through our collective commitment and action. Everyone on this call or in this forum, as well as our 3,000 plus members, will need to plug in, stay tuned in, and contribute what we can. If you're like me, you've been thinking about where and how you want to focus your time, skills, and resources in 2021. I hope you'll join me and become engaged with one of the PNN environmental working groups and contribute what you can to support the organization. Maybe a few folks here are still hesitant to get involved. There's room for everyone in the PNN projects, no matter what your available time or skill set. And you'll have the opportunity to join other neighbors with similar interests and passions for making a real difference. For me, being an environmental activist is incredibly rewarding and fun, and has brought a great deal of meaning to my life. I hope you decide to jump in and join one of the environmental working groups and attend one of the next meetings, or maybe attend them all, like Maurice suggested. And finally, like all successful organizations, the work takes money to pay for the organizers leading the work. PNN is a member-based organization and relies on contributions from paying members. Please consider making a one-time or even a monthly contribution to support this work. I decided to become a monthly contributor because it allows for me to budget my expenses while also allowing PNN to rely on that income monthly and make plans accordingly. Do what you can, but please be as generous as you can. PNN is an organization on the ground and making a difference right here in Philadelphia. Every dollar contributed makes a difference to what we can do together. There's a link in the chat you can use to contribute right now. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to working with you soon.
Gloria, you want to take us home?
Me? I thought it was Stan. Okay, I have nothing planned, but thank you all for coming here today. Thank you for participating. There was a really nice atmosphere. It seems like people have a lot of varied ideas, knowledge of various environmental issues, and energy to get together and try and accomplish something. We don't want to just talk about stuff. We want to actually get something done. We want to create greater economic and racial justice. And we look forward to working with you all to do this by working on the environment. Thank you.
And to end it today, we want to bring you a poem by Amanda Gorman, who you will recall is the National Youth Poet Laureate, who was at the inauguration.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots. We will fail you not, just as we chose to go to the moon. We know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an Earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate your help. Our power is in both our community and our determination to do good things. Have a good weekend. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank
Make
you.
it happen. Bye, everybody.